start to sensitize people to that. I suppose that's just, once you come up with your recommendation, you gotta just PR machine. Us is a big hit for that.
Still got to be there.
Yeah.
We got to get home.
Oh, yeah. Graphs on it, so people are gonna do it someday.
Sweet.
Layers too,
Wait before you put the hammer down.
remember, we're right there,
Yeah, we'll have to.
11%. There we go.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. All right, get into the agenda here. Can I get an approval of the minutes of a meeting held on April 11th, 2018, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We have one person wishing to address the board, and it is on a agenda item, so we will wait for that when we get to that report. Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, Deanne, good news report.
Well, the good news is it's sunny and nearly 70, so. Yes, done with the good news report, right? Actually, no. We want to share a little bit with you today. Every day after the last school building rings, 10.2 million children in the U.S. are cared for and supported by after-school professionals in the community. Here in Sioux Falls, that care and support comes from the Kids Inc. program. We have a program in every single one of our elementary schools. Today marks the start of the After School Professionals Week across the nation, and Jody Miller is the coordinator of Kids Inc. here in the Sioux Falls School District. It's a safe and educational program that keeps kids learning, helps them with homework, and adds lots of fun through field trips, games, and unique experiences. She has a slideshow presentation as well as some additional information to share with you, so I'll invite Jody.
Thank you, Deanne. Well, after-school professionals deserve appreciation for all that they do to enhance education, promote physical and emotional health, provide a safe environment, and expose youth to new experiences. Our Kids Inc. program currently serves 1,500 students daily at 22 locations with nearly 120 staff. After-school professionals are dedicated to the field. We currently have 32 staff that have been with us over 5 years, so you can see many of them are passionate about what they do. A number of them have gone on to be teachers in the district that got their start at Kids Inc. Jamie Wester is a RISE teacher at Patrick Henry. Kelly Fantroy teaches kindergarten at Lowell. Kylie Swart at Harvey Dunn, and Shayla Seiler at McGovern, among many others. Area education colleges often suggest to their prospective student teachers to spend a summer working with Kids Inc., as they gain a lot of classroom management experience during that time. And I recall one of the very first employees hired after I began 10 years ago was a high school student who had some struggles, but I recently filled out information for her to get her law degree. Not only does our program provide numerous enrichment activities for our students, but our staff participate in ongoing professional development. Each year, the state requires a minimum of 10 training hours in a variety of topics. My training assistants, Mike Mortland and Chandra Van Hout, do an excellent job researching and presenting on everything from STEM activity ideas, multiple intelligences, responsive classroom, child development, professionalism, and customer service. These two spend hours each month ensuring the activities taught in Kids Inc. are of the highest quality, and our staff have the resources they need to carry them out. They are constantly looking for new curriculum and resources to improve our program. And many of their afternoons were spent at sites to role model for staff, mentor new staff, as well as assist with major behavior problems or just build relationships with staff and students. It is very evident in all they do that they are passionate about our program, the students we serve, and the staff who are on the front lines daily. As a role model for my staff, I regularly participate in a variety of training and leadership programs. I have been a past president of the South Dakota School Age Care Alliance Board, and I am currently on the leadership team for the South Dakota After School Network. These positions have enabled me to be on the cutting edge of what is happening in out-of-school time programming throughout the state and the nation. As I participate in these groups, I am constantly reassured that we have one of the best programs possible. I recently had the opportunity at a national conference to hear the after-school program director from Parkland in Florida to explain their lack of security and planning prior to the deadly shooting on February 14th. I was very thankful that with the help of school principals, Bob Bray and Jeff Kreider, that Kids Inc. has specific protocols to follow in emergencies, as well as secure access to keep our staff and students safe after school hours. I believe that one of the unique aspects of after-school programs is the relationships that staff build with students and families. One parent commented to me years ago that the students are prepared for an annual change in classroom teachers, but they look forward to the return of their site coordinator and Kids Inc. staff each year. When the staff see families on a daily basis, there is an incredible bond between many of them. For example, at Cleveland, the site coordinator has created a wonderful bond with the children and made his site like one big family. He has monthly potlucks with the families to enhance the feeling of community he has created. But all of our sites enjoy 2 family events per year, one centered around Lights On After School in October, and one in the spring with various activities from parent-student volleyball games, carnivals, talent shows, and dances. Each semester, the students also plan a community service project to learn how to get involved and learn about their communities. We have seen them do things such as make blankets for Project Warm Up and the Children's Inn, where RF Pettigrew recently donated 60 blankets they made to the Children's Inn, treats for the animals at the Humane Society, gathering food for Feeding South Dakota, and the St. Francis House. We've carried this over into our Summer Kids Inc. program with a focus on one charity per summer and doing things to help their programs. We have developed ways for all students to contribute, even though they are not able to purchase donations. Last summer, many students decorated lunch bags for the sack lunches the St. Francis House gives to their residents each day. Summer Kids Inc. is another amazing opportunity for students and staff to bond over hands-on activities, character building, social-emotional learning, swimming, and field trips. Canary Stadium knows when we are there for their daycare day with over 500 students and 80 staff people in bright Kids Inc. t-shirts filling the stands. We are very fortunate to have many staff return summer after summer and build relationships with different students than they may see during the school year. The students also enjoy seeing their Summer Kids Inc. friends year after year. One of our Summer Kids Inc. staff has been with us since he was 16 years old, holding almost every summer position available, but now at age 29, he has decided to take a break, and so he can return to his teaching and coaching job fresh in the fall at West Central. I'm sure many of the students will be disappointed Mr. John will not be working this summer. This summer, we will again be in 4 buildings and are at capacity for all 4 locations. With our new online registration Abby Wheeler developed, our central location filled up a little over a week after our registration opened. Although not on location, Kids Inc. could not function without Abby or Laura Fisher in our office. They handle everything from arranging substitutes to collecting payments, distributing security badges, to answering staff questions when the rest of us are on location. Altogether, we have a great team at Kids Inc., and it shows in the care and services we provide to families throughout our community. I'd like to close by sharing a few recent parent comments from last week. The first parent comments, I also wanted to share how impressed we are with the group of teachers at Harvey Dunn Kids Inc. Ms. Jade leads a great team, and my daughter loves going to Kids Inc. after school every day. In fact, she loves it so much that she's bummed if we have to pick her up early for an evening activity. I find great comfort in knowing how well my child is taken care of, the way they find creative and fun ways to teach the kids, and how fortunate we are to have a program like Kids Inc. They're an incredible bunch, and we appreciate all they do. And another parent comments, I would like to recognize Justin and the staff at Renberg Kids Inc. Every time I pick up my son, all the kids are having a great time. They're organized and very professional. I cannot express enough gratitude and appreciation for the work they do and the time they spend with our children. Thank you for your time, and I invite you to stop by any public elementary school in Sioux Falls between the hours of 3 and 6 to watch our amazing team in action.
Thank you. I've actually had 2 boys go through Kids Inc., and I, too, can just say how much they love it, and always disappointed whenever we picked them up a little early. So it's a great service that we provide our families and the kids to have that structured time after school, and I love that it incorporated everything from play to learning to service. Really gives a very well-rounded set of activities for the kids to enjoy in the afternoon. So thank you, and I'll be sure to make sure I say thank you the next time I'm in school.
I think the only complaint I've heard is there are not enough spaces for more kids to attend. So if you could work on that, that'd be great. But I mean, honestly, I've never used it, but I have many coworkers, and I hear the exact same things that you quoted parents and the things that Kate said too. And honestly, the only thing I hear is, oh, I'm number whatever on the waiting list, and they're so grateful when they do get in. Not just for the convenience, but for the great care that is provided as well. So thank you, and to all of your team for the important role that you have in all of the schools in Sioux Falls.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for being here. All right, moving on. I didn't see any conflicts of interest this week. Okay, moving to the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, can I get approval for supplemental consent agenda item 9A, claims to Sanford, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And that motion passes with 2 abstentions from Board Member Ryder and Board Member Mickelson. All right, moving on to the reports of the superintendent.
We have 4 reports for you this evening. The first report is the Middle School Career and Technical Education Curriculum Study Report, brought to you tonight by our Middle School Curriculum Coordinator, Demi Moon.
Good evening. This evening I have come to you to share the results of our CTE curriculum study and show you what we are proposing for adoption. Currently in the middle school CTE classroom, the students are using PITSCO education modules, and they have 16 different STEM-related modules that the students can choose from in their 7th and 8th grade year if they choose to take CTE during 8th grade. However, PITSCO has decided to discontinue any updates for those modules, which means when the computers that are currently in the 5 middle school CTE classrooms get replaced and or updated to a current operating system, the software that we currently own will no longer work with the Windows 10 operating system. So we are forced to do, sorry about that. We are forced to make a decision about something for our CTE curriculum. So that launched us into this study and search for a new curriculum out of our typical cycle. Pittsco has come up with a new software to replace their current modules, and it's called Expeditions. And it is all web-based, which means whenever they make updates at the company, those updates are automatically delivered to us as the consumer. And instead of buying software updates on an annual basis and trying to get all 16 modules that we own on a cycle for updating, that means whenever they do updates, we automatically receive those, and we just pay a small tech fee annually. Like I said, that left us with a decision to make, whether we continue using the modules, don't update the computers, and don't put the computers in the CTE classrooms on the current operating system that the rest of the district is using, or do we search for a new software? The computers in those classrooms do need to be updated. They are having several difficulties on any given day in any given class period with those computers, and it makes it increasingly difficult for the technology staff to help the teachers in those classrooms when we're not on the same operating system as the rest of the district. Pittsco, in an effort to try to keep our business, brought the 5 CTE teachers and me down to Pittsburgh, Kansas this late fall, this past year, and allowed us to see the new software firsthand. And we got to actually go into a middle school right there in Pittsburgh, Kansas that uses the software and visit with 7th and 8th graders that were using it, ask them questions, and really see a live demonstration of how the software works and what the differences are between our current software and this new web-based software. When we came back, we did explore other vendors and looked into the similarities and differences and what other things they had to offer. And in the end, we really came back to the comfort and the longstanding relationship that we have with our current vendor, knowing the product, and really cost was a big factor in that as well. Those are just random pictures of different things that we have in our current modules, and some of these that we will transfer into our new Expeditions if the curriculum is approved. This here is a picture of one of their dragster race cars that they make, and while the students knew that it was not probably going to win a race with its design, they were going for creativity on the design and the painting job on that one. The new Pittsco Expeditions does allow flexibility between whole class instruction and the current rotational model. So the teachers really liked that they had the ability to modify the Expeditions and do one at the beginning of every quarter in 7th grade and one at the beginning of every semester in 8th grade as a whole class exploration of the STEM activity. And so they've picked one for 7th grade and one for 8th grade that they'll start each new class off with, and then they'll move the students into a rotational environment where they can pick and choose the different activities or explorations that are of interest to them. There were over 40 different titles for us to choose from. We've narrowed it down to 14 different titles. They all have a huge STEM focus, and they all have a career exploration component. And that was one of the pieces that we really liked with the automatic updates, is as those careers continue to evolve and be updated within the software, we'll have access to those most current careers that are connected to the activities that the students are engaged in. The teachers were very impressed with the student engagement. When we were in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and on the site, the students really seemed to like it. They liked the pace, they liked the graphics that were involved, and they liked the activities that the Expeditions took them through. The 14 different titles you can see here, they range from sports engineering to health and body systems. We've kept the bridge activity. The students really like building the bridges. Getting into some graphic communications, a lot of engineering, different expeditions that focus on that engineering model that leads into our CTE Academy and the classes that we teach there. So a polymer science, robotics, that one will continue. Physics and engineering, wind energy, and then the last two there are the two that they have chosen for that whole class instruction, and that's the electric tech and then the engineering rockets. The rockets are very popular with the students. They can't wait to shoot them off and see who goes highest and furthest and those kind of things, or whose doesn't take off at all. And so that was one they decided to also do as a whole class title. This summer, if approved, Pittsco will come on site and do a full-day training where they will explore all 14 titles with our teachers and the teachers will actually have their materials on site when that training happens and be able to set up their different explorations within the classroom and make sure that they are fully prepared to use all of the new teacher tools that are involved in the web-based software. For 14 titles, over 5 schools, including the software access, all of the supplies for 1 year, which the teachers say the way that they do the count for supplies for a year, they really think they can stretch that to almost 2 years in most of the buildings, and so the supplies will come with that. That'll cover probably up to 2 years. And then the annual licensing, that comes to a total cost of $298,525. And we are fortunate that the Perkins grant this year that Josh Hall manages will also be able to help us out with $60,000 of that $298,000 with a one-time purchase. And then Perkins grant will continue to pay that annual license fee every year. So that will not be an additional annual cost to the district. Special thank you to Mr. Hall's 8th period CTE class. 2 weeks ago, I asked him if I could pop in and take some pictures and some video for this presentation today, and he said, you're gonna get me at the end of the day. Second period that day was at the end of the day. He goes, I can't promise anything, but they were outstanding. They couldn't wait to visit with me and show me all their projects and have me take pictures of what they were doing. And so I told him I could come back anytime and sit in there, because if that was the magic, then I could come back. But it was fun. It was awesome to listen to those 8th graders explain to me what they were doing with engines and rockets and building a bridge and how they were using physics to apply the braces and the bridges and everything. So they had only been in that rotation, I think, 2 weeks at the time, so they had learned a lot already in 2 weeks. So just a special thank you to Mr. Hall and his class out at George McGovern. I will answer any questions. Otherwise, my recommendation is to approve the 7th and 8th grade CTE curriculum adoption.
Thank you so much for your report. And this is one area I really think, online curriculum really makes sense, because this is where the world's going for work and so forth. But my question, and this might be more Dr. Maher and Michael, question district-wide, what protections now are being written into our contracts when we're dealing with online curriculum? So when there is an operating system change, or to make sure our time frame that we're thinking budget-wise going forward will be protected and so forth with that.
I can give you my perspective from middle school curriculum so far. More and more of it all the time is moving towards web-based delivery. And with that, then the companies are able to have those updates, and then our use of the internet helps that not be such a conflict. I can defer to Mr. Christofferson as well, too. But that's just my experience with this piece of it, and then the software that comes with
Then the operating
textbooks.
systems matter since it's web-based first installed on there. Okay.
Sure, we look at the terms of service in a lot of those agreements just to make sure that they follow all FERPA recommendations.
Thank you. That was just a question I thought of since we're going as a district more, how we protect ourselves on that. So, thank you. Any other questions? Can I get a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, thanks for the report. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Our second report for this evening is a school calendar recommendations report. Here to present that information is our Assistant Superintendent in charge of Administrative Services, Mr. Nold.
And we'll hear Jamie's report, and then Nancy can come speak afterwards.
Good evening. So this report is to update you on 2 things, the first of which is to propose the changes to the 2017-2018 calendar, weather permitting, and then to make the recommendation for the 2019-2020 Sioux Falls School District calendar for adoption. The first part of this is the 2017-2018 school year calendar. As you recall, we did not have the school day on March 6th due to the weather. So the proposed change here is to move the final student day from Thursday, May 31st to Friday, June 1st, and subsequently the staff workday from Friday, June 1st to Monday, June 4th. So that'd be the recommendation for your consideration for the 2017-2018, and that is posted on all calendars that any missed days will be made up at the end of the school year. The second part to be able to go through with you is the 2019-2020 school year calendar committee recommendation. If you recall, last year in the 2016-17 school year, we went through and took considerable and extensive feedback as far as the calendar. We had over 11,000 responses specific to the calendar. We held the input sessions, the surveys that went to students, staff, and parents, and then also had an open input session on the internet. So on our web base, people were able to provide input and feedback there. And from those different areas, we received over 11,000 responses and utilized those responses. The vast majority of those responses were requesting that the school year start prior to the Labor Day break. The split then was how far before the Labor Day break, some of which opting much more towards the 2 weeks, and the other group within 1 week of the start of the Labor Day break. So we did utilize those 11,000 responses. That's what helped us to set the 2018-2019 school year calendar with the start date and the end date, and we worked on some of those days in between. So the calendar committee this year, since we have not experienced the new calendar for the 2018-2019, we'll experience that this year. So the calendar committee this year utilized those same start and end dates that we'd worked on from the previous year and worked to improve how we utilize the days within the start and end date. So that was really the primary focus of the calendar committee this year in proposing this 2019-2020 school year calendar. Some of the key considerations that we looked at was, first of all, parent-teacher conferences, the dates and times of that. We truly tried to utilize our interpreters in the best way possible. So in doing that, we tried to make sure there was not conflicts with the high school to the middle school to the elementary. So all those school levels and the need for parent-teacher conferences and interpreters were on different dates, as well as the liaisons, because the liaisons will be utilized in from the high schools and the elementaries to help them go out and get those individual parents or families there to the conferences and to benefit the parents. So a parent didn't have to choose between going to a middle school conference or a high school conference. They're all established on different dates, times, so that we did not conflict as best we possibly could. So there's minimal conflict there. Same with staff in-service. This was a concern that came from principals, our curriculum coordinators, and our staff to move that away from an extended weekend. The shorter breaks spread out over the calendar. That was another thing that we went through and implemented through this year. So you'll see on the calendar that there's some breaks built into each one of the months going throughout the school year, still meeting the number of days that we needed to and required. Matter of fact, exceeding those number of days, but consistent with what's been adopted by the board in the past. We will look at that next year to analyze that further and get feedback from individuals. Did they appreciate that being within, spread out throughout the year, or would they appreciate more of a concentrated 1 week time period? But we'll look at that in next year's study as we go through. We also looked at the state boys and girls basketball tournaments as far as minimizing student missed days there, minimizing substitutes needed for the workers that go out and work at the tournaments. It used to be that those were on separate dates. Now the girls and boys state tournaments for the AAs are on the same weekend, so we put that break there so that it minimizes the number of subs or other things, or students missing school days. So those are some of the primary considerations. There was obviously multiple other things, but when the committee looked at this to take into consideration how we'd move days within the calendar, those were the primary considerations that we looked at. The calendar committee itself is made up of 25 members. Of those, there's staff, which we have representatives from each of the recognized employment groups. We have parents, community members, and administration all on that calendar committee. The committee voted 17-0 to approve the proposed calendar. I did have a few email-in votes afterwards, but I told them that I need to go with the ones that were actually there. So it could have been 21-0, but it was 17-0 with those individuals that were there present that night to move forward the proposal of this calendar, school year calendar, to the school board. You can see that calendar on the next 2 pages. The 1920 school year calendar is proposed. That would be something that you would not be able to read on a screen because it's too tight there, but the start and end dates would maintain the same off of all that feedback that we received from the year prior and gave opportunities for individuals to give input on. And then the days within the year, we did take information from those different groups that I'd recognized earlier to establish this year's calendar that we've proposed. So there are 2 different proposals for you tonight. One, to approve this 2017-18 final student day of school will be moved from Thursday, May 31st to June 1st, and the staff workday would then subsequently be moved from June 1st to Monday, June 4th. And then to approve the 2019-2020 school year calendar based on the calendar committee's work and recommendations as detailed in the attachments. And I'd stand by for any questions.
Thanks, Jamie. Any questions? Okay, can I get a motion and a second? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Nancy, just come up and give us your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Nancy Neff. I live at 48036 Indian Ridge Court. I have a son that's at Lincoln High School. So I'm coming to you tonight to just make a request that you send this calendar back to the calendar committee for reconsideration. I have a couple of reasons for that. I can appreciate that a lot of input was received from parents, teachers, students, the community. I understand that. The choices that were given at that time were, do you want to start before Labor Day or after Labor Day? But the families or the people were not really given a choice of the exact day. And I believe, and I am representing the Save Our Summers group, so we as a group do believe that you guys may be setting yourself up for a lot of fallout next January when semester tests come so closely after Christmas break. So these past 3 years, the students did come back after Christmas and had 2 to 3 weeks to really study and prepare for semester tests. Now, with this little bit earlier start date, they have about half the amount of time they have previously had. And I don't believe, and neither does the Save Our Summers group, that the whole community understands that yet. They are aware that the calendar is changing back. We believe that when they gave their input to start before Labor Day, they also assumed semester tests would come before Christmas break. And so I think there's going to be a big misunderstanding and a bit of fallout. So when this calendar committee was given their assignment, they were not allowed to choose a start and end date. That was given to them by the district. So while you did have a 17-0 unanimous decision to accept this calendar, it was accepted with the dates they were given, not dates that they necessarily would have chosen. And we did have some representation from our Save Our Summers committee on that calendar committee, and I can tell you they are not happy with that start date. So that 17-0 to me is kind of not completely accurate. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is the assumption was that if the tests were going to be before Christmas, if school started prior to Labor Day. So now my suggestion would be to go back to that calendar committee, and even if we could just move our start date 3 or 4 days later, just put that weekend in between from where you're starting that Thursday to the next week sometime, that would give a little bit more time before summer break is over. It would give a few extra days after Christmas break for the students to prepare for their semester tests, and it shouldn't cause a big problem with the AP testing. They would get maybe 1 or 2 less days of classroom for that AP testing, but as we all know, the last 3 years and that later start date did not have a detrimental effect on AP test scores. So I guess that's all I have to say. My recommendation would be send this calendar back to the committee with a little bit later start date, and the Save Our Summers group would be happy to work with them. We do have a calendar that we feel like would be very reasonable and work within all your parameters, and see if we could not push the approval of this calendar back a little bit until we can just review it a little bit more. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to separate the two motions before us. The first one is moving the end date from June 1st to June 4th into one motion, and then the second one, so we can have separate discussion, or if we want to unvote those two. So the second one being a second motion.
Okay.
We'll
Got a
second
motion
that.
on the floor? Okay,
Those should be separated.
okay. We vote on that first. Okay. Any discussion on separating the two? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Okay. All right, so the first item, let's take that first, the addition of the, do we have any questions for Jamie at this time?
Just on the first motion right now.
Well, we don't. On the first item, yes. Any questions?
I think it's pretty clear, like you said, it's on the bottom of the calendars to let people know. And we always hope we don't have to, but when it happens, it happens.
I tell my kids, as soon as that snow day comes, I say, you're going to pay for it at the end of the year. So they're prepared. Okay. Well, can I get a motion and a second to approve, I guess we'll call it item 1, the having the last day of school be Friday, June 1st, and the last teacher workday, Monday, June 4th?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Okay, so item number 2. Any questions for Jamie?
So I was on the committee, I'll be upfront and honest, and I think I asked a similar question to this, and I think you had an explanation for me on why, and because I wasn't on last year's committee, and I was just on this year's, why we had, this was the parameter and so forth, so.
And the parameters were established from the input that we received from the year prior. So last year, the 16-17 calendar helped to take all the feedback through community input sessions, and then the survey that was administered, and then an online format. Those individuals that were concerned they couldn't have made it to the feedback sessions could apply or could give input online. And from that, we received all that input, over 11,000 responses. Vast majority start before Labor Day, and then the comments there were given them how far before Labor Day. And so we did discuss on there, talk through at the input sessions and with the committee members, that if we didn't start at least those 10 days prior, we would not have the semester test prior to the Christmas break because there wouldn't be enough days to be able to fit that in. Oh, the vote, the individuals then from the committee understood that information as well and voted on it. The vote last year, I would have to look at it again.
It was 14-7, if I remember right.
What's that?
14-7.
14-7, I do believe.
Between the 2 week, like the third or the fourth week.
Yes. There was no disagreement that I'd had on there as far, from the committee, as far as starting before Labor Day. So the debate then became on how far before. And same way, the vast majority of the data that we got from the input was starting before Labor Day, how far before. Between those two groups, there was a slight edge towards starting the 2 weeks prior, but there was still a significant number that were going to 1 week prior. So we went right in between those two, which correlated identical within a day to virtually all those around us. So we did match it up with individual schools that are around us, then which did assist our CTE Academy because they start school there. We have multiple schools that contract with the CTE. But independent of the CTE Academy, that information was given and the vote was made at that time. So we haven't experienced that calendar as of yet because the first time that'll go into effect is next year. And so for this year, since we hadn't even experienced it yet, to ask people to give input on something they had not experienced, we started with the same start date and end date and worked on the days in between.
Was it discussed, the difference in semester testing right after, or not, closer up to the winter break versus 2 weeks after?
That was discussed, yes. And with some of the teachers, it was discussed. They did not feel that would, I mean, it would be review after that. For the teachers that are impacted by semester tests, their preference was to have it before Christmas. but knew when we went into that discussion a year ago, because the committee was the same other than a couple individuals, new board member, and then one that no longer had.
Mr. Grimm took,
What's that?
Principal Grimm, I think,
Yep.
took ballot boxes.
And so it was virtually the same, so the conversations had been had that year before, that if it was going to go to the, less than 10 days prior, there's no way we could get those semester tests in to keep a balanced semester.
So once next year we settle into this calendar, we are reviewing maybe the start and end dates again based off, once we've had a year of that calendar.
I think it then would be something we could look at, so people would have to experience it first before we can ask them the input on it.
So I'm not part of that group. But so you discussed, since it can't have semester tests before, does it matter that we start later? I mean, that was discussed within
The part that was discussed on that each one of those days that we saved prior helps with the AP testing. And that was one of the pieces of the feedback that we heard was with the AP testing.
Right.
So every day that we do have it earlier, it does benefit with the AP testing, because then there's fewer days that are after the AP tests that we would have on the calendar.
And then there's no real, and again, I know this is the committee, so you talked about the benefit of studying for the test after coming back from holiday break?
We did, and there was very good discussion about that. No
Because I'm
question
weighing
about it.
the AP and the studying for the,
And most all of which would be done in that, and I'd have to look, because all I have is this year's calendar, or the 1920 calendar, but the number of days they have would be in the review process, which impacts the high school. I mean, the elementaries and the middle schools, elementary to some extent, because there are some that will take an AP test, a semester test in the middle school. But we did discuss those things, yes. And the preference for the high school students, high school staff, was to go even earlier start. But when you balance the interest of the two different groups, it was agreed upon to come to a
so to cut,
meeting.
right, so to save our summer people that are on the committee, they understood that.
Everybody on the committee had that discussion and understood that part of it, yes. I don't think there's any misunderstanding on the committee's piece of it, and that's why you saw a split in the vote, the majority of which, yeah. Not the vote this year, the year prior.
So even with two changes, it won't affect that ultimate vote if it's set back to them, probably.
If I go off of last year's feedback on that, no.
And we did have considerable conversation, and if I remember correctly, the high school teacher said that the difference between this calendar and the other is that they would be covering the new information prior to the break, and then when they came back, it would really just be review. But they're not going to spend 8 to 10 days reviewing. They're going to spend probably 3 days reviewing. And so whether they have new content followed by a few days of reviewing followed by the test, or whether they have new content, break, review, test, really to them, they didn't seem to think, they didn't have strong feelings about whether one was better than the other, because they're not going to spend any more time reviewing than they would have either way. So.
Correct. That was the high school teachers that were on there, their feedback.
And I would
others.
also say that we heard loud and clear from elementary teachers that they really appreciated having short weeks to start the year.
Yes.
And so this offers them a chance to have actually 3 short weeks. And I don't know that that's just specific to elementary. I feel like that's great kind of easing back in for students in general to have a couple days, and then they go for another short week, and then they have another short week, especially for the younger kids, but even at all levels, just to kind of get back into acclimating, being back in school for all day long. And so we thought that was a positive piece of this calendar too, is that there was that slow kind of entrance back into the school year.
That was definitely a strong request from the elementary teachers, is to start in with smaller weeks so they can become acclimated until we get into full weeks.
So Jamie and the 2 committee members, would you see a benefit in going back to the?
Well, just as much as I would like to, I think that hearing 14-7, and if there's only 2 new votes, it's not, unfortunately, probably going to change anything. I would have liked the later start. I'm just going to say that. But because that's why I asked him when I first began why we were set on this date. But I understand I lost my vote, so.
I feel like we had a lot of really good discussion in our committee every time that we met, and we considered a lot of different things. And so I personally don't think it would make any sense to go back and say that the people who weren't at our meetings to hear our conversation aren't going to understand the kind of things that we talked about. And I feel like we had a very good conversation, and from lots of people. It wasn't just a one-sided, the same group talking all the time. I feel like people participated and had good attendance regularly at the meetings, and so I just don't feel like it would change if it went back.
And I feel better knowing once we live through a calendar, we're going to re-examine it again.
And next year will be that first year that change goes back into effect again, because, the individuals were able to give the feedback, those 11,000 different responses back after they'd experienced this last calendar. So to be able to go through and experience that again before they'd give feedback again on it. Same way with the breaks throughout the year. Is it better to have some each month, or is it better to have an extended one at one point in time? To me, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be here. But it does matter to some of those families that have the kids and take those breaks. So it is good to get their feedback and input on that.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you, Nancy, for coming.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second? No, we need a motion, please, to approve the 2019-2020 calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Well, I feel that we've taken into account all sides of the issue. And I think as a school board member, if I've learned anything, it is that we need to have an open and transparent process. I feel that that's been done. The structure of the committee changed. We've listened to all sides, and we have to respect, I think, elementary, middle, and high school, and we have to come up with what is the best blend based on the needs of each one of those education groups that we have within our school district. And I think that this calendar does that. I feel that the process has been very true and honest, and I'm ready to take a vote.
I would still wish we could start so that our semester test is before the holiday, but if we can't, this sounds like you guys have had great discussion, and I appreciate the effort that you put into this. So, thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's been a good process. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and we've taken all of that into consideration. And, I think we need to live through this calendar to see what it feels like and what it is next year. And again, like we've said, we can always discuss when the calendar committee meets again next year. So, thank you. All right, anything further? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, moving on.
Okay, our third report this evening is a report on the Facilities Task Force. Here to deliver that report is our Director of Research, Innovation, and Accountability, Doug Morrison. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My pleasure to provide an update on the ongoing community discussion around our growing enrollment needs and what that might mean from a facilities perspective. So we have officially moved from sort of the community and staff engagement session part of the process into what we call the task force portion of the process. So we've got a great cross-section of 30 task force members, and we held our first meeting last Monday night from 5:30 to 8. Happy to report that all 30 members were in attendance, as well as many from the community and school board members as well. You can see I've shown the agenda there of what we accomplished during the meeting. We had a welcome from Mr. Alberti, and then we had introductions of the task force members, co-chairs. So it was really a good overview of who everybody was representing, sort of their reason for wanting to be on the task force. And then Dr. Maher presented basically the phases of the entire process that we'll be following. Joe Donovan, our consultant throughout this, he gave a sort of update on the roles and responsibilities of the task force members. And then finally, the charge was discussed, or what we want the task force to accomplish in the course of their 4 scheduled meetings. Then we had a great presentation by Mike Cooper, the city planning director, on really sort of growth in Sioux Falls and future projects and where future growth might go. And so really a good, engaging overview from him, and really, I think, appreciated by the task force meetings. Then our Director of Operational Services, Jeff Kreider, gave kind of a current rundown of all of our facilities, what programs are run within them, the capacity, the current enrollments, and so a good deal of time was spent going through those. And then Business Manager Veek gave us an enrollment overview and kind of talked about the science behind enrollment and really looking at projections out through 2035 as far as what we might see and linking it up to the city growth patterns. So overall, I think it was a really good meeting, and then we open it up to questions and answers and really engaging dialogue, things that people wanted to see that maybe weren't presented at the meeting. And so really what we've been doing this past week is we put a lot of supplemental data together that was requested out of the task force, whether it's discussed specifically a meeting or not. It may not be, but it's information that some of them wanted to have. So we have compiled all that, and we forwarded on to our co-chairs, and they'll be disseminating it out to the group. And then last week, we also had a follow-up meeting with our co-chairs, Vernon and Nan, to sort of talk about what happened in the first task force meeting and how it went, and then also to look forward to the next task force meeting. So we probably spent an hour and a half last week with them, and I think they were very comfortable where we were at. As Joe Donovan told us, it seems a little hectic, the first meeting, and people are all over the place, but if you really think about what transpired, he thought we were in a very good place, and I think the co-chairs agreed with that. So we've been working to now put materials together for the second task force meeting, which will be a week from tonight, right here at 5:30. And what we will, the task force requested a overview of the funding process, and so Business Manager Veek will give a funding 101 sort of, and how it relates to our capital needs, and so he's ready to go with that. And then really the rest of the meeting will be spent on really our options around enrollment, and so whether that's add on to existing facilities, build new facilities, replace aging facilities, all those discussions is really what will happen the next meeting. So we're hopeful that we can get through at least the background on all of that. And then meeting 3 would be a more in-depth discussion around, maybe beginning stages of prioritizing those options. And so I think we're really on track and have a good process going. The next meeting, again, as I said, will be a week from tonight. And then the third meeting will be May 16th on a Wednesday night, again, back here in IPC. And the final meeting will be May 30th, which is a Wednesday night, again, from 5:30 to 8 here. All that will all culminate in some suggestions from the task force to you guys, recommendations about needs, and as the charge says, they'll prioritize all those. But right now, I think we're in a good spot, and looking forward to our next task force meeting and the great engagement that we had from the task force in the first meeting. So with that, I would stand by for any questions.
Any questions for Doug? No? All right. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the Facilities Task Force Progress Report?
So moved.
Second.
I'd just like to, I know that for anyone that did happen to miss it, these are on the YouTube channel, on the district's YouTube channel. So if you did miss this task force meeting, you can watch it on that. Any other discussion?
I would just say I was here and I was very impressed with the members and how engaged they were. You could see the wheels were just spinning in their heads, thinking of questions, and it was nice to see the variety of people who had different experiences in their own personal backgrounds, whether it was through work or their own education or whatever. And so it was just a nice group, and you could tell them kind of identifying the strengths of people within the group and asking, somebody that knew real estate, asking them this question, or somebody who knew, just different things. And so I thought they worked very well together and asked great questions. And I was very impressed by the list of homework that the district was given of all of the requests that they have. But I think that, like Doug said, they may not actually come up specifically in the meeting, but I think just having them have that as a reference point for their own knowledge will be very helpful.
What Carly said.
Okay. Ditto. Sorry. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right.
Our final report of this evening is the third quarter finance report, which comes to you from Business Manager Todd Beek.
Thank you. We just had the tentative approval of the budget, and as part of that process, we talked about where we stood for the year financially. So I'm just going to give you a quick update on that. We had, on the general fund, we budgeted $5.1 million into the fund balance. Our projection was that we'd come in $2 million to the good on that. So we showed at the end of the year a $3.1 million dipping into the fund balance. Since that time, we've gotten clarification from the Department of Ed that about $960,000 of one-time money from the state that they appropriated out of this fiscal year will actually be received by the school districts next fiscal year. So we can basically roughly take $1 million off that, $2 million to the good, and make it about $1 million to the good. Well, $1 million better. So instead of 3.1 into the fund balance, it'll be 4.1, but we should be next year better off by approximately $1 million. So I just wanted to give you that update, and I would ask for your approval of the quarterly report.
Okay. Thanks, Todd. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, that motion passes. All right, can I get a motion to move into executive session, SDCL 1-25-2, parentheses 2, and 125-2, parentheses 4?
So move.